Theosophy by Rudolf Steiner. Introduction. In the autumn of 1813, when Johann Gottlieb Fichte presented to the world his introduction to the science of knowledge as the mature fruit of a life entirely consecrated to the service of truth, he stated at the very outset, "This science presupposes an entirely new inner sense organ or instrument, by means of which a new world is revealed that does not exist for the ordinary man." He subsequently advanced the following analogy to demonstrate how unintelligible his doctrine must appear when appraised through conceptions grounded in the ordinary senses. Imagine a world of congenitally blind individuals who, consequently, distinguish only those objects and relations existing through the faculty of touch. Venture amongst them and discourse upon colors and the other relationships that exist solely through light and for the sense of sight. You will either convey nothing to their intellects, and this is the preferable outcome if they acknowledge as much, for you will thereby swiftly perceive the error and, if unable to open their eyes, will desist from the futile discourse. Now, those who address others regarding such matters as Fichte treats in this instance discover themselves all too frequently in a position analogous to that of a sighted individual amidst the blind. Yet, these matters pertain to man's true essence and ultimate destiny, and to deem it necessary to cease such futile speech would be tantamount to despairing of humanity. Conversely, one should not for a single instant doubt the possibility of opening the eyes of every individual to these realities, provided that one is earnest in the endeavor. Upon this premise have all those written and spoken who perceived within themselves the maturation of that inner sense instrument whereby they were capable of cognizing the true nature and essence of man, truths concealed from the external senses. It is for this reason that, from the most ancient times, such a hidden wisdom has been perennially discussed. Those who have apprehended a portion thereof remain as certain of their possession as individuals with normative vision are certain that they possess the conception of color. For them, this hidden wisdom necessitates no proof. They recognize, furthermore, that it requires no demonstration for any other person who, like themselves, has developed the higher sense. Such an individual can speak as a traveler speaks of America to those who have not personally beheld that country, yet who can form a conception of it, knowing they would perceive all that he has witnessed were the opportunity to present itself. Yet it is not solely to such individuals that the investigator of higher truth must address himself. He must direct his discourse to all humanity, for he is compelled to proclaim matters that pertain to the entirety of the human race. Indeed, he understands that without a knowledge of these realities, no one can, in the truest sense of the term, be fully human. He speaks to all mankind because he is aware that there exist varying gradations of comprehension regarding that which he has to impart. He knows that even those still distant from the moment wherein they themselves shall be capable of spiritual investigation can meet him with a certain measure of understanding. For the sensibility for truth and the capacity to comprehend it are inherent in every human being. And it is to this understanding, which can manifest within every healthy soul, that he primarily addresses himself. He is also aware that within this understanding resides a force which, by degrees, must lead to higher levels of knowledge. This feeling, which perhaps initially perceives nothing of what is conveyed, is itself the magician that opens the eye of the spirit. In darkness this feeling stirs. The soul does not see, yet through this feeling it is seized by the power of truth. Subsequently, the truth will gradually approach the soul and awaken within it the higher sense. For one individual it may require a longer duration, for another a shorter, yet everyone possessing patience and perseverance attains this goal. For although not every physical eye can be healed, every spiritual eye can be opened. The timing of this opening is solely a question of time. Erudition and scientific training are not prerequisites for the unfolding of this higher sense. It can be developed in the unlettered individual just as readily as in the scientist of high standing. Indeed, that which is frequently termed the only true science in the present era can, regarding the attainment of this goal, prove an impediment rather than an aid. For this science all too often admits as real only that which is discernible to the ordinary senses. And however great its merit regarding the knowledge of that reality, it simultaneously generates a multitude of prejudices that obstruct access to higher realities. By way of objection to what is stated here, it is often posited that insurmountable limits have been permanently established for human knowledge, and that, since one cannot transcend these boundaries, all branches of investigation avoiding them must be rejected. Furthermore, a person who desires to make assertions regarding matters which many consider proven to lie beyond the limits assigned to human cognitive capacities is regarded as highly presumptuous. Those who raise such objections entirely overlook the fact that a development of the human powers of cognition must precede higher knowledge. That which lies beyond the boundaries of knowledge prior to such development resides, following the awakening of faculties dormant within each human being, entirely within the domain of knowledge. One point in this context must, indeed, not be neglected. One might ask, of what utility is it to speak to individuals regarding matters for which their cognitive powers are not yet awakened, and which remain, therefore, inaccessible to them? However, this is also an erroneous perspective. One requires certain faculties to discover the matters referred to. Yet if, once ascertained, they are communicated, every person can understand them who is willing to apply to them unprejudiced logic and a healthy instinct for truth. In this volume, the matters revealed are of no other nature than those capable of conveying the impression that through them, the enigma of human life and the phenomena of the world find a satisfactory explanation. This impression can be made upon anyone who permits comprehensive thinking, unobscured by prejudice, and a feeling for truth that is free and without reservation, to take effect. Let one merely adopt the interrogative stance. If the assertions made herein are true, do they provide a satisfactory explanation of life? And one will find that the life of each human being supplies the confirmation. To serve as a teacher in these higher regions of existence, it is by no means sufficient that a person has merely developed the sense for them. For that objective, science is as necessary as it is for the vocation of teaching in the realm of ordinary reality. Higher vision alone constitutes a knower in the spiritual just as little as healthy sense organs constitute a scholar regarding sensory realities. And because, in truth, all reality, the lower and the higher spiritual, comprises merely two aspects of one and the same fundamental essence, anyone who is unlearned in the lower branches of knowledge will, as a rule, remain so regarding the higher. This fact generates a sense of responsibility that is incalculable in him who, by a spiritual calling, is destined to act as a teacher in the spiritual regions of existence. It engenders in him humility and reserve. Yet it should deter no one from engaging with the higher truths, not even he whose life circumstances afford no opportunity for the study of ordinary science. For one can, indeed, fulfill one's task as a human being without comprehending botany, zoology, mathematics, and other sciences. However, one cannot, in the full sense of the word, be a human being without having, in some manner, approached a perception of the nature and destination of man as revealed in the higher wisdom. That zenith to which the human spirit is capable of aspiring is designated the divine. Furthermore, he is compelled, through one modality or another, to align his supreme destiny with this divinity. Consequently, that higher wisdom which discloses to him his essential nature, and concomitantly his destiny, may with great propriety be denominated divine wisdom or theosophy. From the vantage point herein indicated, this treatise shall delineate the contours of a theosophical interpretation of the cosmos. The author shall present nothing herein that does not constitute a verity to himself, in precisely the same manner that an experience of the external world constitutes a fact for the ocular and auditory faculties and the ordinary intellect. Indeed, the discourse shall address experiences which become accessible to every individual possessing the resolve to traverse the path of knowledge elucidated in a specific section of this work. Chapter 1. The Ninefold Constitution of Man. The ensuing observations by Goethe delineate, in a beautiful manner, the point of departure for one of the avenues through which the constitution of man may be ascertained. When an individual first becomes cognizant of the objects encompassing him, he contemplates them in relation to himself. And justly so, for his entire destiny is contingent upon whether they gratify or offend him, attract or repulse, succor or injure him. This thoroughly natural mode of regarding and adjudicating matters appears as facile as it is requisite. Notwithstanding, an individual is thereby exposed to 1,000 errors which frequently occasion him shame and embitter his existence. A far more arduous task is undertaken by those whose acute yearning for knowledge impels them to strive to observe the objects of nature within themselves and in their reciprocal relations. For they soon sense the absence of the standard which aided them when, as persons, they regarded the objects in reference to themselves personally. They lack the standard of pleasure and displeasure, attraction and repulsion, utility and injury. This standard they are compelled to renounce entirely. They should, as dispassionate and, so to speak, divine beings, seek and investigate that which exists, rather than that which gratifies. Thus, the true botanist should be influenced neither by the beauty nor by the utility of the plants. He is obliged to study their structure and their relation to the remainder of the vegetable kingdom, and precisely as they are one and all enticed forth and illuminated by the sun, so should he, with an equable, tranquil gaze, behold and survey them all, obtaining the standard for this knowledge, the data for his deductions, not from out of himself, but from within the sphere of things which he observes. The concept thus articulated by Goethe directs attention toward 3 categories of things. First, the objects concerning which information continually flows to man through the portals of his senses, those that he touches, smells, tastes, hears, and sees. Second, the impressions which these produce upon him, and which register themselves as his pleasure and displeasure, his desire or abhorrence, according to whether he finds one harmonious and another inharmonious, one useful and another harmful. Third, the knowledge and the experiences which he, as a so to speak divine being, acquires concerning the objects, the secrets of their activities and their being which unveil themselves to him. These 3 regions are distinctly separate in human existence. Consequently, man becomes aware that he is interwoven with the world in a 3-fold manner. The first aspect is something he finds present and accepts as a given fact. Through the second aspect, he transforms the world into his own affair, into something possessing significance for himself. The third aspect he regards as a goal toward which he must unceasingly strive. Wherefore does the world appear to man in this 3-fold guise? The simplest consideration shall elucidate that. I traverse a meadow bedecked with flowers. The flowers make their colors known to me through my eyes. That is the fact which I accept as given. I rejoice in the splendor of the colors. Through this, I convert the fact into an affair of my own. By means of my feelings, I link the flowers with my own existence. A year subsequently, I pass again over the same meadow. Other flowers are present there. New joy arises within me through them. My joy of the previous year will appear as a memory. It resides within me. The object which aroused it in me has vanished. But the flowers which I now behold are of the same species as those I perceived the year prior. They have grown in accordance with the same laws as did the others. If I have enlightened myself regarding this species and these laws, I discover them again in the flowers of this year, just as I recognized them in those of the former year. And I shall perhaps muse as follows: the flowers of the past year are gone. My joy in them remains only in my remembrance. It is bound up with my existence alone. That, however, which I recognized in the flowers of the former year and recognize again this year, will persist as long as such flowers grow. That is something which revealed itself to me, but which is not dependent upon my existence in the same manner as my joy is. My feelings of joy remain within me. The laws, the being of the flowers, remain outside of me in the world. Man continually links himself in this threefold manner with the things of the world. One should not, for the time being, read anything into this fact, but merely accept it as it presents itself. It renders it evident that man possesses three sides to his nature. This, and nothing else, will for the present be indicated here by the three words body, soul, and spirit. He who connects any preconceived meanings, or even hypotheses, with these three words will necessarily misunderstand the following elucidations. By body is here denoted that by which the things in the environment of a man reveal themselves to him, as in the example just cited, the flowers of the meadow. By the word soul is signified that by which he links the things to his own being, through which he experiences pleasure and displeasure, desire and aversion, joy and sorrow. By spirit is meant that which becomes manifest in him when, as Goethe expressed it, he regards things as a so to speak divine being. In this sense, the human being consists of body, soul, and spirit. Through his body, man is able to place himself, for the time being, in connection with things. Through his soul, he retains within himself the impressions which they make upon him. Through his spirit, there reveals itself to him what the things retain within themselves. Only when one observes man in these three aspects can one hope to gain enlightenment regarding his entire being. For these three aspects demonstrate him to be related in a threefold manner to the remainder of the world. Through his body, he is related to the objects which present themselves to his senses from without. The materials from the outer world compose this body of his, and the forces of the outer world operate also within it. And precisely as he observes the things of the outer world with his senses, he can also observe his own bodily existence. But it is impossible to observe the soul existence in the same manner. All occurrences connected with my body can be perceived with my bodily senses. My predilections and aversions, my joy and pain, neither I nor anyone else can perceive with bodily senses. The region of the soul is one which is inaccessible to bodily perception. The bodily existence of a man is manifest to all eyes. The soul existence he carries within himself as his world. Through the spirit, however, the outer world is revealed to him in a higher modality. The mysteries of the outer world, indeed, unveil themselves within his inner being, yet he steps in spirit out of himself and permits the things to speak about themselves, about that which possesses significance not for him, but for them. Man gazes upward at the starry heavens. The delight his soul experiences belongs to him. The eternal laws of the stars which he comprehends in thought, in spirit, belong not to him but to the stars themselves. Thus, man is a citizen of three worlds. Through his body, he belongs to the world which he perceives through his body. Through his soul, he constructs for himself his own world. Through his spirit, a world reveals itself to him which is exalted above both the others. It is evident that, because of the essential differences of these three worlds, one can obtain a clear understanding of them and of man's participation in them only by means of three distinct modes of observation. The corporeal being of man. One learns to know the body of man through the bodily senses, and the mode of observing it can differ in no way from that by which one learns to know other objects perceived by the senses. As one observes minerals, plants, and animals, so can one observe man also. He is related to these three forms of existence. Akin to the minerals, he constructs his corporeal form from the materials of nature. Analogous to the plants, he matures and propagates his species. He perceives the objects surrounding him and, paralleling the animal realm, constructs his inner experiences upon the basis of the impressions they engender. Consequently, one may ascribe to man a mineral, a vegetable, and an animal existence. The structural divergences among minerals, plants, and animals correspond precisely with these three modes of being. It is this structure, this configuration perceived via the senses, which alone one may designate as the body. Yet, the human physique differs distinctly from that of the animal. This distinction must be universally recognized, irrespective of one's remaining convictions concerning the relationship between humanity and the fauna. Even the most intransigent materialist, who repudiates the very existence of the soul, cannot evade concurrence with the subsequent proposition articulated by Carus in his Organon der Natur and de Geists. While the subtle, internal architecture of the nervous system, and particularly that of the brain, remains as yet an unresolved enigma to the physiologist and the anatomist, it is an irrefutably established fact that this concentration of structure intensifies progressively within the animal kingdom, attaining in man a stage unparalleled by any other entity, a fact which possesses the deepest significance regarding the spiritual evolution of mankind, of which, indeed, we may candidly assert it constitutes a sufficient explication. Therefore, where the cerebral structure has not developed adequately, where its diminution and deficiency are manifest, as in the instance of microcephaly and those with severe cognitive impairments, it is axiomatic that one can no more anticipate the emergence of original concepts and knowledge than one can expect the propagation of the species in individuals possessing wholly atrophied reproductive organs. Conversely, a robust and aesthetic constitution of the entire individual, and especially of the brain, will certainly not in itself substitute for genius. Nevertheless, it will inevitably provide the primary and indispensable prerequisite for higher cognition. Just as one attributes to the human vessel the three forms of existence, mineral, plant, and animal, so must one now ascribe to it a fourth, the distinctively human form. Through his mineral mode of existence, man is related to all that is visible. Through his vegetative mode, to all entities that grow and propagate their species, and through his animal existence, to all those that perceive their environs and, by means of external impressions, cultivate inner experiences. Through his human form of existence, He constitutes, even regarding his physical corpus alone, a kingdom unto himself. The sole being of man. The sole nature of man is distinguished from his corporeality by virtue of constituting his own interior world. This inner realm, peculiar to each individual, confronts the observer the instant one directs one's attention toward the most elementary sensation. One discovers, primarily, that no individual can ascertain whether another perceives even the simplest sensation in precisely the identical manner as one does oneself. It is established that there exist persons who are colorblind. They discern objects solely in varying nuances of gray. Others are partially colorblind. Consequently, they are unable to distinguish specific chromatic shades. The image of the world which their eyes present to them differs from that of so-called normal individuals. This principle remains valid regarding the other senses as well. It becomes apparent, therefore, without further elaboration, that even simple sensations appertain to the inner world. I may perceive with my bodily senses the red table which another likewise perceives. Yet I cannot perceive his specific sensation of red. One must, therefore, designate sensation as belonging to the soul. If one comprehends this single fact with absolute clarity, one will soon cease to regard inner experiences as mere cerebral processes or analogous phenomena. The initial result of sensation is feeling. One sensation elicits pleasure in man, another displeasure. These are the agitations of his inner, his soul life. Through his feelings, man creates a second world in addition to that which operates upon him from without. And to this a third is added, the will. Through it, man acts reciprocally upon the external world. Thereby he stamps the impress of his inner being upon the outer reality. The soul of man, as it were, streams outward within the activities of his will. The actions of the human being differ from the occurrences of external nature in that they bear the insignia of his inner life. In this manner, the soul represents that which is man's own in contradistinction to the external world. He receives incitements from the outer realm, but in responding to these stimuli, he constructs a world of his own. The corporeality becomes the foundation of the soul nature of man, the spiritual being of man. The soul nature of man is not determined by the body alone. Man does not wander aimlessly and without objective from one sensation to another, nor does he act under the influence of every casual incitement directed upon him, whether from without or through the processes of his anatomy. He contemplates his perceptions and his actions. By reflecting upon his perceptions, he acquires knowledge of things. By reflecting upon his actions, he introduces a rational coherence into his existence. He is cognizant, furthermore, that he will fulfill his duty as a human being only when he permits himself to be guided by correct thinking, in knowledge as well as in deeds. The soul of man, therefore, confronts a twofold necessity. The laws of the body govern it in accordance with natural imperatives. Yet it permits itself to be governed by the laws which guide it to exact thinking because it voluntarily acknowledges their necessity. Nature subjects man to the laws of metabolic transmutation, but he subjects himself to the laws of thought. By this means, he establishes himself as a member of a higher order than that to which he belongs through his corporeal form. And this order is the spiritual. The soul is as distinct from the body as the body is distinct from the soul. So long as one speaks merely of the particles of carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, and oxygen which oscillate within the body, one does not have the soul in perspective. The soul life commences only when, amidst the motion of these particles, sensation arises, and one can articulate, "I taste sweetness," or "I experience pleasure." Just as little does one have the spiritual in view when one considers merely the soul experiences which course through a man who surrenders himself entirely to the external world and his corporeal existence. Rather, this soul life is merely the foundation for the spiritual, precisely as the body constitutes the foundation of the soul life. The naturalist or investigator of nature concerns himself with the body, the investigator of the soul with the psyche, and the investigator of the spirit with the spirit. To realize what one is in oneself, and thus to clarify the distinction between body, soul, and spirit, is a prerequisite which must be exacted from those who desire, through thinking, to enlighten themselves regarding the constitution of man. Body, soul, and spirit. Man can enlighten himself accurately concerning his own nature only when he apprehends the significance of thinking within his being. The brain constitutes the corporeal instrument for thinking. Just as man can perceive colors only with a properly constructed eye, so does the suitably constructed brain serve him for thought. The entire human form is so fashioned that it finds its coronation in the organ of the spirit, the brain. One can comprehend the construction of the human brain only by observing it in relation to its function, which consists of serving as the instrument or implement for the thinking spirit. This is corroborated by a comparative survey of the animal kingdom. Among amphibians, we find the brain diminutive in comparison with the spinal cord. In mammals, it is proportionately larger, and in man, it is largest in relation to the remainder of the body. There exist many prevalent prejudices regarding such assertions concerning thinking as are advanced herein. Many individuals are inclined to underestimate thinking, and to prioritize the warm vitality of feeling or emotion. Certain proponents, indeed, assert that it is not through arid intellect ion but through the warmth of sentiment, by the immediate potency of the emotions, that one ascends to superior knowledge. Individuals who articulate this view harbor an apprehension that lucidity of thought may obtund the sensibilities. Such a conclusion undeniably stems from mundane cognition concerning only matters of utility. However, regarding thoughts that conduct one toward elevated planes of existence, the converse is true. No emotion or enthusiasm bears comparison to the sentiments of warmth, beauty, and exaltation enkindled by those pure, crystalline thoughts pertaining to higher realms. Indeed, the supreme sensibilities are not those which arise spontaneously, but rather those acquired through energetic and persevering intellect ion. The human physical constitution is structurally adapted for cognition. The identical materials and forces present within the mineral kingdom are combined within the human form in such a manner that, through these combinations, thought may manifest. This mineral structure, fashioned as an instrument appropriate for its function, shall herein be designated the physical body of man. This organized mineral fabrication, possessing the brain as its center, comes into being through propagation and attains its mature form through growth. Man shares the attributes of propagation and growth with both plants and animals. Indeed, propagation and growth distinguish the animate from the inanimate mineral. That which lives proceeds from the living by means of the germ. The descendant succeeds the forebears in the lineage of the living. Conversely, the forces through which a mineral originates must be sought within the very materials composing it. A quartz crystal is formed by forces united within it, inherent in the silicon and oxygen. The forces shaping an oak tree must be sought circuitously within the germ of the maternal and paternal plants. The form of the oak is preserved via propagation from progenitors to descendants. Within all that is living, there exist innate interior determining forces. It was a rudimentary perspective of nature that maintained lower animals, even fishes, could evolve from mire. The form of the living is transmitted by means of heredity. The manner of a living being's development depends upon the parental entities from which it has sprung, or, phrased differently, upon the species to which it belongs. While the constituent materials change continually, the species persists throughout life and is transmitted to descendants. Thus, the species is the factor conditioning the organization and molding of matter. This species-forming agency shall here be termed the life force. Just as mineral forces express themselves in crystals, so the life force expresses itself in the species or form of vegetable and animal life. Man perceives mineral forces by means of the corporeal senses. However, he can perceive only that for which he possesses the requisite faculties. Absent the eye, there is no perception of light. Absent the ear, no perception of sound. The lowest order of organic beings possesses only a rudimentary tactile sense. For these, there exist only those mineral forces of which the sense of touch permits awareness. In proportion to the development of additional senses in higher animals, the surrounding world becomes richer and more variegated. Consequently, it depends upon a being's organs whether that which exists in the external world exists also for the being itself as perception or sensation. That which is present in the atmosphere as a specific vibration becomes, in man, the sensation of hearing. Yet, man does not perceive the manifestations of the life force through the ordinary senses. He observes the hues of plants and inhales their fragrance, but the life force remains concealed from this mode of observation. However, the ordinary senses possess no greater justification to deny the existence of the life force than a congenitally blind man has to deny the existence of color. Colors become perceptible to the blind individual immediately upon successful operation. In like manner, the life force, generative of the various plant and animal species, becomes present to man as an object of perception as soon as the necessary organ unfolds within him. Through the unfolding of this faculty, an entirely new realm reveals itself to man. He perceives now not merely the colors, odors, and attributes of beings, but the entities themselves. In each plant and animal, he discerns, alongside the physical form, the life-imbued spirit form. To designate this spirit form, let it be termed the ether body or life body. To the investigator of spiritual existence, this subject presents itself as follows. The ether body is not merely a product of the physical body's materials and forces, but a veritably independent entity that first summons these physical materials and forces into life. One speaks in accordance with spiritual science when asserting that a purely physical body, such as a crystal, derives its form from the physical formative forces dwelling within it. A living body, however, does not derive its form from these forces, for at the moment life is extinguished and the form is surrendered solely to physical forces, it disintegrates. The ether body is an organism that preserves the physical body from dissolution at every moment during life. To behold this body, to perceive it within another being, one requires the awakened spiritual eye. Absent this, one may accept its existence as a fact upon logical grounds. Yet with the spiritual eye one may view it as distinctly as one views a color with the physical eye. One should not take umbrage at the appellation ether body. Ether in this context designates something distinct from the hypothetical ether of the physicist. One ought to regard the term simply as a designation for that which is herein described. Furthermore, just as the physical body of man is constructed in conformity with its appointed task, so too is it in conformity with the ether body of man. One can comprehend it fully only when observing it in relation to the thinking spirit. The ether body of man is distinguished from that of plants and animals by being organized to serve the requirements of the thinking spirit. Just as man belongs to the mineral realm through his physical body, so he belongs to the life realm through his ether body. Following death, the physical body dissolves into the mineral world, and the ether body into the life world. The term body designates that which in any manner imparts shape or form to a being. The word employed in this sense must not be confused with the term body when used to designate physically sensible objects. Used in this specific sense, the appellation body may also be applied to forms assumed by soul and spirit. In the life body we yet possess something external to man. With the initial stirrings of sensation, the inner self responds to the excitations of the external world. One may trace what is justifiably termed the outer world to any extent, yet one shall not succeed in locating the sensation itself. Rays of light stream into the eye, penetrating until they reach the retina. There, they induce chemical processes. The effect of the stimulus is transmitted via the optic nerve to the brain, where further physical processes ensue. Could one observe these events, one would perceive merely additional physical processes, just as elsewhere in the physical realm. If I am capable of observing the ether body, I shall perceive how the physical brain process is simultaneously a life process. Yet, the sensation of the color blue, which the recipient of the light rays experiences, can nowhere be found in this manner. It arises solely within the soul of the recipient. Therefore, if the being of the recipient consisted only of the physical body and the ether body, sensation could not exist. The activity by which sensation becomes a reality differs essentially from the operations of the life force. By that activity, an inner experience is elicited from these operations. Without this activity, there would exist a mere life process such as that observed in plants. If one endeavors to visualize how a human being sustains impacts from every quarter, one must simultaneously conceive of him as the wellspring of that aforementioned activity which streams outward toward every point whence these impacts were received. Sensations respond in all directions to these stimuli. This font of activity shall be designated the sentient soul. This sentient soul possesses a reality equal to that of the physical body. If a man stands before me and I disregard his sentient soul, regarding him merely as a physical vessel, it is precisely as though I were to summon in my mind the bare canvas rather than the painting itself. A similar assertion must be posited regarding the perception of the sentient soul as was previously advanced in reference to the ether body. The corporeal organs remain blind to it. Equally blind is that organ by which life qua life may be perceived. Yet, just as the ether body is discerned by means of the corresponding organ, so too can the inner realm of sensation itself be perceived through a yet higher organ. An individual then not only senses the impressions of the physical and vital worlds but beholds the sensations themselves. Before a man possessing such a faculty, The sensation world of another being lies spread out like an open and, for him, a legible volume. One must distinguish between experiencing one's own world of sensation and observing the sensation world of another. Every man, naturally, may look into his own realm of feeling. Only the seer with the open spiritual eye may perceive the sensation world of another. Unless a man be a seer, he knows the world of sensation solely as an interior reality, merely as the peculiar, hidden experiences of his own soul. With the open spiritual eye, however, that which otherwise resides solely within the inner being of another shines forth before the external spiritual gaze. The sentient soul relies, regarding its activity, upon the ether body, for it extracts from that vessel what it shall cause to gleam forth as sensation. And since the ether body constitutes the life within the physical body, the sentient soul is indirectly dependent upon the latter. Only with correctly functioning and well-constructed eyes are accurate color sensations possible. It is in this manner that corporality affects the sentient soul. The latter is thus determined and limited in its efficacy by the body. It exists, therefore, within the boundaries established for it by corporality. The body, accordingly, is constructed of mineral substances, is vitalized by the ether body, and itself imposes limits upon the sentient soul. He, therefore, who possesses the aforementioned organ for perceiving the sentient soul, observes it strictly limited by the body. Yet, the boundaries of the sentient soul do not coincide with those of the physical form. The soul extends somewhat beyond it. By this, one perceives that it proves itself more potent than the physical body. Nevertheless, the force by which its limits are defined proceeds from the physical form. Thus, between the physical body and the ether body on the one hand, and the sentient soul on the other, there inserts itself another distinct member of the human constitution. This is the soul body or sentient body. One might also posit that a portion of the ether body is finer than the rest, and this more refined part of the ether body forms a unity with the sentient soul, whereas the coarser portion forms a type of unity with the physical body. Notwithstanding, the sentient soul extends, as has been stated, beyond the soul body. What is here termed sensation constitutes merely a fraction of the soul being. Connected with sensations are the feelings of desire and aversion, impulses, instincts, and passions. All this bears the same character of individualized life as do the sensations and is, like them, dependent upon corporality. Just as the sentient soul enters into mutual action and reaction with the body, so does it also engage with thinking with the spirit. Thought, inter alia, is of immediate service to it. Man formulates thoughts concerning his sensations. In this manner, he enlightens himself regarding the external world. The child who has suffered a burn reflects upon it and arrives at the thought, "Fire burns." Moreover, man does not follow blindly his impulses, instincts, and passions. His reflection upon them creates the opportunity through which he may gratify them. That which is termed material civilization moves entirely in this direction. It consists of the services which thinking renders unto the sentient soul. Immeasurable quantities of thought power are directed toward this end. It is thought power that has constructed ships, railways, telegraphs, and telephones, and by far the greatest proportion of all this serves only to satisfy the requirements of the sentient soul. Thought force permeates the sentient soul in a manner similar to that in which life force permeates the physical body. Life force connects the physical body with progenitors and descendants, thus bringing it under a system of laws with which the purely mineral body is in no way concerned. In the same manner, thought force brings the soul under a system of laws to which it does not belong as a mere sentient soul. Through the sentient soul, man is related to the animals. In animals also we observe the presence of sensations, impulses, instincts, and passions. Yet the animal obeys these immediately. They do not, in its instance, become interwoven with independent thoughts transcending immediate experiences. This is also the case to a certain extent with undeveloped human beings. The mere sentient soul is therefore distinct from the evolved higher member of the soul which brings thinking into its service. This soul that is served by thought shall be designated the intellectual soul. One might also term it the emotional thought soul. The intellectual soul permeates the sentient soul. He who possesses the organ for perceiving the soul beholds, therefore, the intellectual soul as a separate entity, distinct from the mere sentient soul. By thinking, man is elevated above and beyond his own personal life. He acquires something that extends beyond his soul. He comes to assume the conviction that the laws of thought are in conformity with the laws of the world. And he feels at home within the cosmos because this conformity exists. This conformity is one of the significant facts through which man ascertains his own nature. Man searches within his soul for truth, and through this truth, it is not only the soul that speaks but the very things of the world. That which is recognized as truth by means of thought possesses an independent significance, which refers to the things of the world and not merely to one's own soul. My delight in the starry heavens is part of my own inner being. The thoughts which I formulate regarding the courses of the heavenly bodies possess the same significance for the thinking of every other person as they do for mine. It would be absurd to speak of my delight were I not in existence, yet it is not absurd in the same manner to speak of my thoughts, even without reference to myself. For the truth which I contemplate today was true yesterday also, and shall be true tomorrow, although I concern myself with it only today. If a fragment of knowledge affords me joy, that joy holds significance only so long as it lives within me. The truth of the knowledge possesses its significance quite independently of the joy. By grasping the truth, the soul connects itself with something that bears its worth within itself. And this worth does not vanish with the feeling in the soul any more than it arose with it. What is genuinely truth neither arises nor passes away. It possesses a significance which cannot be destroyed. This is not contradicted by the fact that certain human truths possess a value that is transitory, inasmuch as they are recognized after a certain period as partial or complete errors. For man must acknowledge that truth, after all, exists in itself, although his conceptions are merely transient forms of the manifestation of eternal truth. Even he who declares, in the manner of Lessing, that he contents himself with the eternal striving toward truth because the full, unalloyed truth can, after all, exist only for a God, does not repudiate the eternity of truth, but rather establishes it by such an utterance. For only that which possesses an eternal significance in itself can call forth an eternal striving after it. Were truth not independent in itself, were it to acquire its worth and significance merely through the feelings of the human soul, then it could not constitute the single common goal for all mankind. One concedes its independent existence by the very fact that one desires to strive after it. Moreover, as it stands with truth, so too does it stand with the truly good. The moral good is independent of inclinations and passions, inasmuch as it does not allow itself to be commanded by them, but rather commands them. Likes and dislikes, desire and loathing, belong to the personal soul of man. Duty occupies a station superior to likes and dislikes. Duty may stand so high in the estimation of a man that he will sacrifice his life for its sake. Furthermore, a man stands the higher the more he has ennobled his inclinations, his likes and dislikes, so that, without compulsion or subjection, they themselves obey recognized duty. The moral good, akin to truth, possesses its eternal value intrinsically and does not receive it from the sentient soul. By causing the self-existent true and good to come to life within his inner being, man elevates himself above the mere sentient soul. The eternal spirit irradiates this soul. A light is kindled therein which is imperishable. Insofar as the soul dwells within this light, it is a participant of the eternal. It unites its own existence with an eternal existence. What the soul harbors within itself of the true and the good is immortal therein. That which shines forth in the soul as the eternal is to be designated here the consciousness soul. Consciousness can be spoken of even in connection with the lower stirrings of the soul. The most ordinary quotidian sensation is a matter of consciousness. To this extent, animals also possess consciousness. The kernel of human consciousness, that is to say, the soul within the soul, is herein meant by the term consciousness soul. The consciousness soul is accordingly differentiated from the intellectual soul as yet another distinct member of the human soul. The intellectual soul remains enmeshed in sensations, impulses, passions, and the like. It is common knowledge that, initially, a man holds that to be true which he, owing to his feelings, prefers. However, only that truth is permanent which has liberated itself from all taint of such feelings as sympathy and antipathy. The truth is true, even if all personal feelings revolt against it. The portion of the soul in which this truth resides shall be termed the consciousness soul. Thus, just as one was compelled to distinguish three members in the body, one must also distinguish three in the soul: sentient soul, intellectual soul, and consciousness soul. And precisely as corporality operates from below upwards with a limiting effect upon the soul, so the spiritual operates from above downwards into it, expanding it. For the more the soul permeates itself with the true and the good, the wider and more comprehensive becomes the eternal within it. To one capable of perceiving the soul, the splendor which emanates from a human being because his eternal nature is expanding is just as much a reality as the light which streams from a flame is real to the physical eye. For the seer, the corporeal man is but a fraction of the whole man. The body, as the coarsest structure, resides within others which interpenetrate both it and each other. The ether body fills the physical body as a dual form. Extending beyond this on all sides, the soul body is to be discerned. And beyond this, again, extends the sentient soul, followed by the intellectual soul, which grows larger the more it receives into itself of the true and the good. For this true and good cause the expansion of the intellectual soul. A man existing solely and entirely in accordance with his inclinations, his likes and dislikes, would possess an intellectual soul whose limits coincide with those of his sentient soul. These organizations, in the midst of which the physical body appears as though within a cloud, are designated the human aura. In the course of the childhood of a human being, there arrives a moment in which, for the first time, he perceives himself to be an independent being distinct from the entirety of the rest of the world. For persons of a finely strung nature, this is a significant experience. The poet Jean-Paul states in his autobiography, "I shall never forget the event which took place within me, hitherto narrated to no one, and of which I can give place and time, when I stood present at the birth of my self-consciousness. As a very small child, I stood at the door of the house one morning." Do you want access to this and all the complete audiobooks on the channel, plus the ebook version? Click the link in the description or scan the QR code in the left corner of the screen to access our library, where you can listen to your favorite esoteric books without ad interruptions, lock your screen, or use other apps while the narration plays, and even download the ebook version to follow along as you listen. Listen on your computer via web browser, or download the app from the Play Store. After subscribing, you will receive an email with your login details, password, and step-by-step instructions on how to access the books through the Hotmart app.